So, hello and welcome. This is the first in about 4 weeks of the Growth Strategy podcast. And my name is Steve Pugh. And if we don't know each other, about once a week, maybe slightly less in summer holidays, I do a podcast series where I introduce you to interesting people that I think can help your business or career. Today, Lisa is a guest who I've wanted to get on for a while. Really great business experience, a marketer by trade, but we're going to talk about loads of really interesting stuff, her journey, just lots of really interesting stuff. So if you join us for the next kind of 30, 40 minutes, we're going to talk about something called SmartWorks Newcastle. And I don't want to ruin all the good stuff, but actually I think it should be a really good kind of conversation. And then likewise, before I bring her in, if you have any questions, comments, anything, please let us know. If you comment, it should pop up on my screen and I'd love to bring them in as well. So Lisa, there we go. There we go. People can now see you and hear you. There we go.
Excellent. Hi, Steve. How are you doing?
Good, thank you. Would you be happy to give a quick kind of 30 seconds on who you are, where you're from?
Yes, of course. So I am Lisa Eaton, founder of Unwritten Group, which is a strategic marketing consultancy, and founder of Fabric Academy, which is a training academy built to empower the most ambitious marketers to thrive. I wear two hats now, two different businesses, both with marketing at the core. It's a busy old time juggling two businesses. So on top of that, I also wear the hat of deputy chair at SmartWorks Newcastle, which you mentioned a moment ago, which is a charity that's very close to my heart. Hopefully trying to drive that organization forward.
No, cool. And as a fellow kind of podcaster, I know you appreciate almost the benefit of long form content, but you do get to go into more interesting stuff and get to know someone a little bit better. But actually, I think that's so important. Just when you're trying to get a vibe off, realistically, do you want to do business with someone or not? Do I like them? Do I trust them? What are they like? And it's all those intangibles in a 10-second TikTok. And I might pick your brains on TikTok because I'm not on it. I'm going to ask you about it. But at least with a podcast and video and stuff, I think you really get a feel for someone, especially when it becomes like a series and stuff that you kind of work on.
Well, you get to see the personality behind the written word, don't you? You get to see the spoken word, you get the tone of voice, you get the, all the things that go wrong. And you get somebody's real honest and gut reaction to a question without it being over prepped and overthought. So yeah, there's definitely an element of intimacy that you get from video content that you don't quite get from written content, that's for sure.
I must admit, it's on that authenticity. I was a guest on Chloe Clover from Wonder Films podcast. Yeah. And it was, for me, I love doing it live because although we do edit when it goes onto YouTube, it's kind of just start finish. We don't take stuff out, if you know what I mean. But I like the authenticity of that it won't be perfect and I might stumble, but it's just, that's the way I want to do it. And it's just really fascinating the way, I like the jeopardy of different stuff, but it is a great kind of format. But if I can ask you the most important question you're going to hear today, are you watching Love Island?
Absolutely not. So I cannot commit to Love Island because it's just too much of a time commitment in life. No, Love Island is not for me. Unpopular opinion, I'm sure, but no, unfortunately not. I've got too busy a life to watch Love Island. I think both my businesses would take a dive if I spent my evenings watching that.
It's Casa Amor. It's the bit when it all starts to kick off. And it's just, what's quite funny, because like my wife is a partner in a law firm. I do quite a serious job when I don't do this. And sometimes it's quite nice just to watch trash as a way to switch off.
Yeah. I'm not great at that, to be honest, Steve. I don't switch off very much and I don't tend to watch a huge amount of TV. And Love Island, don't get me wrong, if I'd watched the first 2 episodes, that would have been it. I would have been hooked, and after 2 years, I've watched it. And then I had to stop watching it. But I do avoid everything on social media because I have this terrible fear that I'm missing out on something wonderful. So it's not because it's not great as a guilty pleasure. It's just the time commitment is too intense.
What's your feeling on that? Because obviously with a lot of marketing, it's to react to the cultural zeitgeist. It's things that people are talking about, and how can you get in on the conversation. And just as a completely aside, this isn't like a planned question, but it's almost where, do you and your team do you track what's going on socials and trending topics?
I mean, we have to track what's going on. And I actually did a post about Love Island, funnily enough, just as Love Island launched around their partnership changes and, that passion for being more sustainable in terms of who they're influencing in fashion buying. So, you do have to be relevant. You have to be talking about the things that your audience are talking about, of course. And you have to be able to react to certain topics that come up. We've just literally talked about the government sometime early announcing a change of advice around businesses stopping marketing, which is something very close to my heart. Yes. So of course I had a instant reaction and therefore an opinion on that. But you can't consume yourself, in my opinion, in too much of it, because you would never get the day job done. So I pick and choose the things that I feel really strongly about, and I have an opinion on those things which I feel are relevant and will be important to my audience. And the rest of the stuff I leave for somebody else to comment on.
It was interesting before we went on air, and you did ask me who the audience, because I'm with you. You want to tailor. It's like a presentation, at least the stuff that you share. But a lot of people don't think about that. And it's just, we won't go into the depths of what is marketing and stuff. That's been covered a million times. But I think it's just fascinating about the way that different people approach the same thing, be it as an interview guest or whichever. I think it's fascinating. So one of the things that I do try and do, because I think I always try and think, how do people get value and what do they want to see and hear from stuff? Because often you get all the generic kind of spiel about who someone is and their background. But for me, when you get to learn more about someone's journey through school and how they got to where they are today, I think it's really fascinating, because I think we're a similar age, but it's almost that when I grew up, the internet wasn't necessarily a thing. That actually nowadays, if you're thinking about getting into marketing, you can go into YouTube. It's my thing of choice. What is marketing? What is social jobs? And actually the hope is that people might discover you or any of my previous guests or my future guests. And actually, they might want to get into marketing, but they don't know how. So actually learning more about people that have done it. And for instance, growing up, I always wanted to become managing director, but being honest, I didn't even know what it was.
Yeah, of course.
You know what I mean? And it's that kind of thing. So people talking about their journey and how they got there is kind of, I think it's quite cool. I think it's quite interesting as well. Yeah. So where did you grow up?
So I grew up here in Newcastle. I went to school in Ponteland. And I had, I guess, an interesting journey through school. Loved school, absolutely loved it. I loved the experience of school.
Were you one of the popular kids?
I kind of was, yeah. I had a great group of friends who are still my absolute best friends to today. We're still all very close, the 8 of us, and we're spread all over the world now, but we still see each other all the time, and have remained friends kind of, 30 years on. But yeah, I guess I grew up in the environment, loving school because I had a great group of friends and I got to go and learn every day and I got to spend time with them. I wasn't the best academic student. I did okay. I wasn't a star student, but I did A's, B's, some C's. I struggled with following the rules sometimes. I liked, if I saw a better way of doing something, I got really frustrated that you couldn't just implement that in school. So I'd quite often go a little bit rogue. But otherwise loved the school. I loved the journey through school and everything that it taught me. I went on to sixth form and I did business studies, psychology and graphic design in sixth form. And I'd already decided at that point I was going to be an entrepreneur. It was never framed as entrepreneur at that time. It was just framed as having your own business. But I absolutely knew from an early age at school that I would have my own business. I had no idea what that was going to be in. I had no idea what I wanted to do when I grew up. I didn't have this master plan. I just knew that I would be my own boss. And so the crazy ideas that came out were absolutely bonkers. I've got all sorts of diaries of like the ideas that we had growing up, and I would always try and get my friends involved in like this new scheme that I was running or this new crazy idea that I had. And none of them ever really got off the ground, as you would imagine, in the school years. But when I got to sixth form, I found it really tricky to be hanging around a common room all day, living the social student-y life and not learning as quite intensely as I was when I was in kind of full-time school. And I was just really itching to get into work. I wanted to go make some money. I wanted to get into a job that I could make a bit of an impact in. And so I dropped out of sixth form and went off to the world of work, and it started. Yeah,
You know what's
17.
funny? It's the amount of people, because I do choose the guests that I speak to, of course I do. But it's funny the amount of people that go on to run a business that are or were or still are like rebellious at school, and they don't. I was the same. I was one
Yeah,
of the kids that I was, ironically, because I was short sighted, but it wasn't picked up until I went to uni. So I'd sit at the back of the class because all the cool kids did.
yeah,
But because I couldn't see the board, I'd be quite disruptive. But I was the same. But actually, the more people you speak to, that kind of willingness to kind of challenge the
yeah,
authority figure is really, really, really common. And
yeah,
again, really impressive that the just to know what you wanted to do at 15, 16, 17. I
yeah.
okay, I know now what I want to do, but I'm 39. But you get my point. That's really most people don't.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, I didn't know it was in marketing. I didn't know it was going to be in the creative world. I didn't actually know where the heck I would end up, if I'm completely honest. I just knew I would. And my mom and my dad had always had businesses, and totally different businesses. They build one, then they sell it or close it down, and they'd start another, and they were never linked. They were always in different things. So I obviously came from quite an entrepreneurial kind of upbringing, but yeah, I was always, I think, destined to just do my own thing.
Cool.
And I struggled with conforming with things I didn't always agree with. So I thought it was best to break out and just do it on my own.
How did your parents? I guess How did your parents react when you said, "Look, sixth form isn't for me"?
They loved it. They were fine with it. They did.
Wow, really?
Yeah, they had no issue with that at all. I think they knew I had a couple of side hustles going on by that time. I was doing all sorts of different things. I think they just knew. And neither of my parents went to university. So they hadn't really gone all the way academically either. And so, yeah, they were super supportive. They, by the time I actually started my own business as Unwritten, I'd already had a small property business and a dance business at that point. So by the time I went into what I call my proper business, which was Unwritten, I'd had a good 10 years of experience of playing around with other businesses that I wasn't relying on as my income. So I was able to learn a lot from those experiences. But yeah, they were straight kind of supportive in terms of off you go and find your place in the world of work, definitely.
Wow. I think it might be because of their background, but still pretty cool that someone would do that. I think so many people would be petrified about what the hell they're going to, and you'd get told that. No, that's really cool. So what was your first job then? How did you kind of, or your myriad of jobs to kind of fast forward through to kind of where you are now?
Yeah, so I started at Northern Gas and Power. It was Northern Gas and Electric at the time, but as in sales, and I was there for a period of time. And then my first proper job, which I class as the one that I guess launched me into where I am now, was at Sage. So I went to work in the sales and marketing department at Sage. Which was an amazing learning experience. Their training program was unreal. You were constantly supported and developed in your abilities to upskill. You were also let loose to do a lot of the stuff that you wanted to do. So for me, it was that perfect balance of freedom with support and that kind of confidence and build. Yeah, so it was great. I had a wild time there. I was actually there when Graham Wiley was at the helm, and when Graham moved on from Sage, I also moved with him to TSG, which I then led the marketing department there for a period of time whilst we built that business from a very small kind of technology business, which was going into the giant that TSG is today. And after that, I found my way into agency. And I guess that's where I found my real sweet spot. It was the perfect mix of sales and creativity and marketing, dealing every single day with a new challenge and a new problem and a new client, and how to overcome those issues and problems via creative solutions. And so that was 20 years ago now.
Wow.
Shocking, I know. But 20 years was when I started in my first agency role, and I've never looked back. I guess I've stayed there for those 2 decades.
Because there's always a big debate, and I have it every week, is to do with what is the right route for different people. And the truth is, it depends on you.
Yeah.
But what's really funny is that depending on what type of job you do, if you want to be a doctor, a mechanical engineer, design airplanes and stuff, a lawyer, an accountant, and there are a few jobs where you need to kind of go to uni to learn the skills. But most others, I'm not sure you do, but actually I still think that you don't really start properly learning until you leave. And, you know, like genuinely now, I don't have kids, but if I did, I wouldn't necessarily tell them to just do whatever they think is the right thing for them. So I have two cousins. Josh goes to Sheffield Uni, where I went to do engineering. I did. I didn't push him, but he goes in September. But he's very academic. That's the right thing for him. His brother Jamie loves cooking. He's a completely different animal. Definitely don't go. Do your own thing, learn. But it's just at school, at least for me, they never really gave the option. It was that you have to do this and you have to get straight A's and you have to do that, otherwise your life ends. And I think that's part of the reason why I think it's so important to talk about different career paths and stuff, because actually the stuff you learn in sales is so important. You know what I mean?
Completely. And I think what I think is really moved on since we left school, because we're similar ages, Steve. So what I think has really moved on is embracing different ways for kids to be able to learn and to flourish. And not everybody learns via the academic system. You know, not everybody is a great academic, but, you know, that doesn't mean they're not going to be great, you know, business leaders or creatives or inventors or, you know, whatever they choose to go on and do. So it's about understanding that actually, if academia isn't right for you, finding that learning experience that actually is right. And whatever that learning experience is, it needs to be there and optional for people. And I guess, you know, slightly jumping ahead, but this is part of why I built Fabric, because not everybody wants to go to university and study a marketing degree. Some people want to learn in a much more interactive, hands-on, practical way. And I guess that's how I've always learned best. And I really felt that option was missing in marketing.
I get it.
But I love that my children now most definitely will always have the option to follow whatever path they choose, whether that be academia, whether it be straight into work, whether it be go off traveling and learn life experiences and communication skills. And yeah, I think it's a lot more supportive and a lot more accepted now than when we left school and it was, you go to uni or you're going to be a dropout.
It's true. So can you tell us a bit about Unwritten? Just kind of what you do?
Yes. So Unwritten came about having been in marketing agencies for about 10 years. So I'd worked in a small agency in Newcastle. I was then headhunted by Robson Brown to go and work for them. And they, at the time, were the biggest advertising agency in the Northeast. So of course, if you wanted a career in marketing, advertising, creative, that's where you went. And I went off to Robson Brown, leaving a job that I really loved actually at Blue Milk. And I took a pay drop. I went for less money and I hated it. It wasn't for me at all. That agency was felt very much like a production line. I'd come from a really small agency, which was super creative, and you could do whatever you felt was best for the client to service them and meet the brief. I moved to a much more rigid agency and just didn't find that enjoyable, didn't find I could make my mark on the clients or the workplace. So I left there and went off to back to a smaller agency that had been around for some time to manage and grow that agency with the intention of buying out the owner. I spent nearly 7 years at that agency with a buyout plan in place, which didn't quite happen. It all fell through. But at that point, Amy and I, who was my co-founder of Unwritten at the time, were both working in the same agency, had met way back when at Sage and worked through the agencies together. So great colleagues, great friends. And we were just a bit fed up of seeing how it could be done, but it wasn't being done. And we were both at a point in life where we decided it was time to, I guess, take that risk and do it for ourselves. And so we set Unwritten up just gone 8 years ago, actually. It was our birthday on the 30th.
Congrats.
So yeah, 8 years ago. And we set that up with a real strategic focus, as you would imagine. We were an agency that was always going to be strategy first. Always with strategy at the core of everything that we do, and the creative would come secondary. Not that the creative was any less important, of course, it had to be equally as brilliant, if not better, but for us, we really believed that good, effective creative had to come from a strategic foundation. And we felt there was a bit of a gap up in the Northeast for that type of agency. Some phenomenal creative agencies, which of course there was and still is, but none that were really focusing solely on strategic foundations and building. And so, yeah, we built that business, as I say, 8 years ago, and still doing the great work it has always done today.
How was it launching with the founder?
It was
with someone else,
amazing, absolutely brilliant. I mean, Amy and I are brilliant friends and brilliant colleagues. We were told, don't go into business with your mate, it'll never work. We were told 2 females running a creative agency will never work. We were told 2 people with similar skill sets would never work. And so we were pretty driven to prove everybody wrong when we set this business up. We weren't scathed by that at all, and we were kind of out to prove those people wrong. But we just were so very aligned with what we wanted to build and how we wanted to build it. And we literally worked day and night, as you do when you set up a business. We took all the risks that you would take in, removing the regular income of the salary that you have. We didn't want to take out huge loans, so we did it. We launched the business with nothing, with no revenue. We didn't eat for about 6 months. It was a absolutely wild ride, but it was brilliant, Steve. And I guess doing it with somebody who you really, really work well with is the best feeling, because we were just constantly on an adrenaline high. And whenever one of us felt a bit tired or knackered, or we made a wrong decision, or we weren't quite sure, the other one was there to back up, and vice versa. And it worked really, really well.
Do you ever disagree?
Do you know, we laugh about this all the time. We were actually together last week and had this very conversation. In all the years we ran Unwritten together, in fact, in all the years we've been friends, because we've been friends for 20 years, we had one massive fallout, and it was over the planning of the Christmas party at Unwritten. No word of a lie. That is totally true. We had a big fallout over, I can't even remember the details now, but we had an argument over the planning of the Christmas party. And that is the only disagreement we ever had. And that's not to say we always agreed with each other. So, we'd have difference of opinions on creative briefs. We'd have difference of opinions on how we should approach and manage a client. We'd have different opinions on how we manage the team or grow the agency. But never, ever did we disagree. We would always come together with a common approach, and other than the Christmas party, which broke us, to be fair.
But it's just funny that I think it has to be done the right way, that constructive challenge is what you need in a partner. That if you both just agree all the time, you don't need 2 people. And it's that balance of having the trust with people. So when I work with clients, when I've had something difficult I need to tell them, I always think back to actually Maureen, who's one of my clients based upstairs, will basically say to me, look, Steve, I pay you for your opinion. And you need that, because at the end of the day, you need, or you want to create a successful entity, whatever that is. It doesn't matter whose opinion is correct. It's whatever's right for the thing as you are. And, I do everything myself. There was a joke before we came on air, because when I was a guest on Lisa's show, she had a partner, I guess, called Maddie, who does everything. And Lisa just interviews. I don't have that. So I was running around clicking all the buttons. But I rarely get it, and I embrace it. And, I'm almost jealous in some ways of people that have businesses with teams. But the one thing that gets me, it's the worry and the risk of salaries and overheads and that kind of thing, that actually I personally would struggle to deal with that I would work every hour, every day, because I'd worry about John's wages in 6 months' time. And therefore I wouldn't enjoy it. So I purposely go this route and outsource stuff. But it's just, so I'm always fascinated when people kind of do what they do.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong. I mean, the worry and the responsibility that you have when you have a team is like nothing else. It really is. And I don't think I probably ever really appreciated that until the pandemic hit. And up until that point, our business had been pretty much steady growth. We didn't have huge ups and downs. We knew the model really well. We were able to forecast and plan. And up until that point, I mean, I'm not a big worrier anyway. So for me, I always think it will be fine. And if it's suddenly not fine, I'll make sure it is fine. So I'll do whatever it takes to be fine. The pandemic brought a whole different dimension there where you suddenly, our business fell off a cliff. I think we lost 83% of our revenue overnight. And I had the biggest team I'd ever had. And I had a 1,500 square foot office in the center of Newcastle. I mean, our overheads were outrageous. And so that brings a whole nother dimension of responsibility and worry. But you also can't do everything that you want to do on your own. And it's a lonely place on your own. Even when you're with a team, it can be a lonely place. But, you know, those people who are in the business who are better at you than things that you're not so good at, or will challenge your opinions and it pushes you to be better, or, you know, will really call out some of the things that you're not doing and it makes you better. That type of environment is brilliant to grow as a business leader, as it is as well as growing as a business. So for me, I always try and bring people into Unwritten and Fabric who are ballsy, opinionated, confident enough to tell me when I'm wrong and that I should be doing it a different way, because it's important that it's not just my way. And, you know, 9 times out of 10, these people are way better at me than what they're challenging me on, and therefore they are right and I am wrong. Or, you know, we come to a common ground. But I love that challenge. Not always in the moment. Sometimes I find it a bit difficult, but I always love what that challenge brings as an output.
But I think it's that resilience. But again, going back to when we talk about education before, it's not for everyone. This is one of my pet peeves. So I did do the academic route and been to uni a few times, whatever. But say if you teach in business, you could go and do an MBA at pick a university, and they'll talk about resilience and what you should do in the pandemic and what you should do here. But those people teaching that stuff didn't go through it. I remember, because there's an offshore energy company that I help run, and I remember when it kicked off, and we're like, do we send people home? Do we not? What? And the point is, you have lived experience from, as a business owner, as a marketer, as a manager, as a mother, that kind of thing. So I would always 100% take your opinion on how to do stuff, because to be crude, when your cock's on the block, it's a different decision to tell someone, oh, the theory is that you should do this. And this is one of my other pet peeves. On my live stream on Friday morning, I'm going to discuss traditional business university MBAs against challenger alternative MBAs. And it's the whole thing of where I don't give a crap about your Harvard referencing system to talk about the theory of that versus that versus that. This is what you actually have to do to make some money, to pay your bills. And they're worlds apart. And if you want that, go for that. But actually, if you want to know how to become a thriving marketer, you know, look at Fabric, look at different stuff, because you've been there and you've done it. And it's that, I think it's really important. That's, again, part of the reason why I love to do this, is that I remember with us, it was like, do we fellow people? What is fellow? Do we get a assistance loan? And there was so much stuff that I've lived through it as you did. And it's tough, and I really respect that.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I love that approach around, I mean, I love your strap line, you know, real world education. Had you not had that, I would have totally pinched that, because that is brilliant. But this is what I think we need now, as our generations are coming up behind us. You know, they don't need necessarily to be taught by academics all the time. And, you know, I'm not rubbishing that route in any way, shape or form. There is a place for university, and there are lots of people who thrive and really need that rigor and that discipline and that process to learn.
But it's a different sport. And the analogy you go into sport is that, imagine you have to run a marathon. You can either learn from an actual runner that runs the marathon, or a sports scientist who might teach you about how muscles degrade and rebuild stronger to do with the proteins and stuff. Only one of them is going to make you actually run faster. But when it comes down to your income and paying your bills and actually and that's the difference that, for me, and rightly or wrongly, and the more experience you get, you kind of see past the veil, you see past the curtain about what actually you need. Going back to what you said before about hiring people, for me, it's all about character. And I don't care what your CV is and what your certificates are. It's about the person and what, you know, how do you, especially in marketing, show me what you've done. Because so many people talk the talk, but their stuff is crap and you can see it.
And it's interesting because through my business journey, I've had a series of different mentors, some which have been more like business growth coaches. So they teach you how to grow a business, but they've never done it themselves. So the minute you throw the question about, well, in this circumstance, how did you do this? It blows their mind. I've then had a set of mentors who were not marketers, weren't in my industry at all, but had run and grown really, really successful businesses. In fact, one of those mentors turned into my non-exec for a period of time. And they were invaluable in my decision making and helping me see about what I was going to do, because the minute we talk about those growth pillars, and I'd say, but in this circumstance, what would we do here? When I did this, this is what I did, and they can really resonate with what you're kind of weighing up. Whereas the growth coachy type people, they haven't actually done it themselves. So,
and one of the things that I deal with, is that so when I first set up, it was 2 years ago. So I was 37, and yes, I had really good jobs, and I knew I was good at doing stuff. I hadn't read the book yet, and a lot of the people that I compete with are 57. And a lot of them are old white male and stale. And it's that classic thing, but they all talk the talk. But when you actually look at their actual businesses, not what they tell you about, but their actual, none of them have really done anything. And so part of my approach was, you know what, I'm just going to show you, I'm just going to do it. I'm going to write the book, I'm going to scale, I'm going to launch this, I'm going to launch that, I'm going to do it. And then if you don't want to hire me, that's fine. But at least it's hard to criticize, to say that, he doesn't know what he's talking about. When I show you twice a week, every week, I show the progress, and it's that kind of... But that again goes down to, I hire people and I spend money with people that have proven the stuff, the goodies. And far too many people talk the talk, especially on Instagram and stuff. And you're like, mate, anyway. So can you tell us about Fabric?
Yeah, so Fabric was built for that very reason. So I was on a growth trajectory with Unwritten, and we were providing strategic consultancy for businesses that were looking to grow, and that was doing really, really well. And I could not recruit strategic marketers come hell or high water. I looked for them everywhere. I really, really struggled to find marketers who weren't just amazing project managers or client service directors, but those who could take a business plan and challenge a senior management team and pick it apart to then build a marketing and communication strategy. And it was driving me mad that I was having to slow the growth of Unwritten down because I couldn't find these people. And so impatiently as I am, I just thought, sod it, let's start building our own little training program, which is what Fabric initially was. It was a recruitment strategy for Unwritten. And in our own strategic planning of what this training program looked like, we started doing a huge amount of competitor research and the best ways to bring in talent and the best ways to train talent. And when we started doing this piece for our own strategy, we realized that there was a massive gap in the market for marketers who want to learn in a different way to the academic route. And even those who were following the academic route, there was a huge disjoint and a massive gap between what industry requires and what's being taught in academia. And I was just kind of scratching my head thinking, somebody must be filling this gap. There must be something out there that shows marketers how to do it from the ground up, whilst doing it themselves, whilst being coached by industry experts, to be able to go in and real evidence, the strategy, the tactical execution, and then the measurement piece for the effectiveness. And so, there was a massive gap, Steve, and we just, as usual, whenever I see a bit of a missing piece, I just think we can fill this. So what happened is, in the midst of the pandemic hitting, this training program was already running behind the scenes. I then had a huge team of marketers who our kind of work fell off a cliff for a period of time. And things got a bit quiet, and I was homeschooling 2 kids, and that wasn't really what I was wanting to be doing. And I thought, let's build another business. This sounds like a good plan. And so we decided to take Fabric from a training program internally and open it up to the entire market and turn it into a business of its own. And it has just flown. It's been almost 2 years since we made that decision now. We're about 18 months into running the program through a ton of successful cohorts. We're reaching learners all over the world. We've got somebody from the Philippines, Africa, USA, and Europe on this current cohort. It's just doing phenomenal things. And I think for me, the real purpose behind Fabric was to give marketers that knowledge and training that I'd spent 20 years in the industry learning and defining, the things that aren't taught in universities or by the CIM, in my opinion. It's the things that you learn on the job, but are so invaluable. They're way more valuable than the the theoretical stuff. So yeah, we try and pack that into 12 weeks. We get learners to go through our program. They build a live strategy whilst they're on the program, and they submit it at 3 points throughout. So we can review it, we can support them in the feedback process, and so they don't go off kilter if their strategic piece at the beginning is incorrect. And essentially we do it to help them get either their first role in industry or a promotion within their current company, a seat at the board table, which I'm always fighting for with marketing, bigger budgets, and essentially those bigger essential results for businesses who are looking to grow in their efforts. So yeah, it's been a wild journey, but it's going well.
Alice Rowanhall says, "Go Lisa, so inspiring."
Oh, Alice, yeah, she's awesome, absolutely awesome. If you ever need a business leader to look up to, that's Alice for sure.
Likewise, Alice, I'll get you on the podcast at some point. I know we don't know each other, but I'll just shoot my shot now. But no, but I love it because, for one, when you always look at how you grow and pivot a company, you look for need, and your need came from an actual different place. A lot of people launched online courses because they thought it was a way to make easy money, but you didn't do that. But also you kind of knew what the gap was. And so the one for me, again, was very similar, but on a broader business sense, that growing up, where do you actually learn the actual stuff to actually make money? And how do you, my big one as well is that often if you go to Waterstones, you get sales books, management books, marketing books, strategy books, but nobody ever glued it all together. And I was like, well, I know how to do it. Anyway. So,
intertwined, it is. Yes, you're so right. It's so intertwined. And I guess my need for fabric was never to make money. I was making good money in Unwritten.
But that's the difference. People can tell. So I do it because it's a genuine passion project and I want to help people. But you can tell, and I think that's what people buy into.
Yeah. And for me, it was just driving me mad that nobody was supporting marketers in this way. There is such ambition out there in marketing. There's such amazing career paths and progression in marketing. Some of the best CEOs and business leaders out in the world were marketers at heart. So, for me, it's such a missed opportunity for those marketers who want to go into businesses and really help them progress. And this is why I get so passionate, we'll call it, about businesses who pick and choose when to market, and they'll throw a bit of money at it, and then as soon as times get hard, they cut the marketing budget. And it's the last thing that should be cut. Hence my rant about the government's crazy advice en route that businesses should withhold marketing budget to cut consumer prices. Do not cut marketing budget. It's what helps you grow as a business.
You did the Mark Ritson mini MBA marketing.
Good.
Would you be happy to do a compare and contrast? Because I have my own views.
Yeah,
and I'd love to know how was it, and how does it differ to fabric?
Yes, so I did Mark Ritson's as part of my competitor research. That's the reason I did it. I'm
doing something very similar at the moment, but I'll tell you after it's all done, just in case they kick me off. But I agree with you.
But yeah, when we do competitor research, we do it really in depth, and it was important for me that I did study as a learner on many different courses to be able to compare and contrast.
I love this. I love that you're doing that. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
But it's both shady and not, and because I'm doing exactly the same as we speak. So I embrace the hustle, Lisa. I love it.
I'm very open and honest about that. That's nothing to be ashamed of. I would love people to go and do fabric and be inspired to build something bigger and better that suits them. No such thing as competition. I'm all about collaboration. So for me, that's the best way to learn. I did it in the midst of lockdown whilst I was juggling one business, which was dying a death with these insane overheads, whilst I was building another business and getting it off the ground, and whilst I was homeschooling 2 kids. So trust me when I say it was not the easiest thing to start and do an MBA at the same time. But I loved it for a couple of reasons. I love Mark Ritson. I know he's very Marmite, but I just love how blunt and ballsy and opinionated he is. And he does not give a shit whether you like his opinion or not. You don't have to agree with it, but I love that he's so direct and honest with his opinions. I loved it because I love learning. So any type of learning, if I could spend every day just learning and not having to work, I'd just do that constantly. So I loved it for the reason that I was able to just embrace myself back in the world of a marketing learner, and really be a student again. And I loved it because it gave me so much insight into what somebody very successfully was doing with their online course.
From the academic viewpoint.
Yeah. The things I wasn't so keen about it was the training structure for me was still very academic. So Mark obviously is he is a lecturer. He's been around all of the big universities. He lectures regularly. It still felt very academic, just with his own spin on it. And the structure of the course, that you go all the way through the program and submit an exam at the end, still for me felt very academic. We had already planned the way Fabric would work, and we were actually in prototype phases by the time I did this piece anyway. So it's not that we used that course to change our own, because we'd already planned the structure, but it certainly did cement to me why we were very different to what Mark offers. And I think his program is great. I would always recommend it. I think it's brilliant learning for anybody. But for those people who actually want to do a piece of work, a live piece of work, and they want to be helped and coached because it's lonely out there doing it on your own, that course isn't for that. And Fabric is for that. So we are there to help you build a life strategy for the organization you're in. So you're doing this practical piece of work whilst you're on the course. You're not getting through it and submitting an exam. And you can't go too far through the program without us seeing it and feeding back. So you can't go wrong at the beginning. There was places in the people who I was in the community with on Mark Ritzen's who got quite low grades and they were really disappointed, but it was because they'd gone really wrong right at the very beginning and they just couldn't catch it up further through. So I'm a big fan. I'm actually contemplating doing the brand management one.
I know someone that's done it. Apparently it's good.
Yeah, not for competitor research as such anymore, but just because any opportunity to learn is a good opportunity. And, you know, for me as a marketing practitioner, I have to make sure I'm at the forefront of those trends and techniques and, you know, the learning skills and styles out there. So yeah, I would say if you're considering it, it's a great course to do. And particularly if you like the academic style, I think it's great.
I'm with you that there's a big difference that the way a traditional university MBA works. They have marketing modules, Porter's 5 Forces, they'll teach you all the theory. You write a paper, 3,000 words, on how you apply the stuff. It's got nothing to do with actually doing anything. And they're just completely different. Hi, Chris, as well. Hi, Shana. And I'm with you, so I love the sound of yours, but I do love the shady research. That's made my day. Because what's interesting though is that often without competitive research, you don't know who else offers whatever. And then likewise, say on imposter syndrome, you would think, well, actually, why should anyone care about mine? You know what I mean? Why do I think I can do it better than Mark Ritson? But it's because you have different lived experience, you have a different viewpoint, and that's, you know, either you want that or you want this, but that's cool. On the chap himself, ironically, I rarely respect his stuff. So when he does on YouTube, like once or twice a year, different marketing awards where they go through and give case studies, big American brands and stuff. I love that. I think that's great. But on LinkedIn yesterday, he called out and kind of ridiculed a VP at Unilever because he was talking about brand archetypes, and Mark was like, that's bullshit.
Yeah.
That to me is bullying on a mass scale. And he had 1,000 people jump on it to agree with him. But how do you feel if you're that vice president at Unilever who loves marketing, I guess? And it's that I don't like.
But, you know, I guess that is challenge at its biggest form, isn't it? I mean, you know, if you put an opinion out there, you've got to be open to people to disagree with that opinion or have a challenging opinion or have just something completely different. And I think, I don't know if this is something that just comes with age or confidence or, you know, having been there and done that. But I think if you're willing to put an opinion out there, you have to be willing to take the challenge. And it's good not to always agree with people. You know, a difference of opinions, diverse opinions is what makes the world go round. So I do agree that he has a force behind him, and sometimes that's potentially used in the wrong way. But I do also really respect the fact that he will just stand up for his opinion and call it out if he thinks it's different. So yeah, he's more my character, isn't he? He's not everybody's cup of tea.
But that's interesting though, you know, I knew, because I used to live in Jamaica, and it was that thing of where, for one, from an education point of view, not everyone wants to learn from a man. You know, a lot of people resonate better with you than they would with me. But then likewise, we have some learners in Nigeria that they would relate better to a Nigerian origin teacher than they would me. But that's cool. I'm fine. And it's just, but the point is different personalities, but at least he stands out. He has a brand. But because, you know, your two courses are so aligned, I wanted to ask what the difference is, but I think it's very cool. And I would personally pick yours over his. Can we talk about GINWAG and your different kind of webinar series and stuff?
Yes.
What is it?
So GINWAG is a podcast that I started through lockdown. I guess before lockdown, I was a keen networker. I loved being out in Newcastle networking in business groups, in marketing groups, in anything actually that I felt was relevant to me and my journey at the time. So I was very active on the kind of networking scene. And then lockdown hit and I hated the online networking. It wasn't for me at all. I just really, I couldn't find my place. I couldn't find my voice. I was bored on most of the calls and like texting at the side. So I just stopped doing it. But after I stopped doing it for a little while, I really started to miss that social connection and the conversation that you'd have with new people that you'd never met before. And so I thought, just start a podcast. Why not? Or just give this a whirl in the midst of like everything else going on. But it was just a really lovely way to be able to connect with other business leaders or people that I wanted to know more about or I respected or just wanted to learn from, really. I was quite blatant with my invitations of, I think you're doing an awesome job. What can you teach me? What can you teach my community? And so I had some amazing guests, but also it was just a lovely way to connect with people again. And that kind of continued actually for way longer than I thought it would. It ran, I've literally, the last episode went out a couple of weeks ago, which was Chloe Clover, who was awesome. And we've put that on hold for a tiny bit because you'll know that we've developed into webinars over that same period. And the webinars have kind of taken on a life of their own. They're doing phenomenally well and we're getting constant requests for them. And so I'm just trying to manage the two channels really. Probably they'll merge into one, I would assume, over the next couple of months as we move forward with the new series of Level Up. But Level Up was very similar. We're building a marketing community at Fabric. We're all about empowering people with knowledge and expertise. And I wanted to go out to the people in the industry that I respected the most and bring their knowledge to our community. And so we choose people on specialist subjects who can really help our community with things they might be struggling with. So some of those things might be marketing tactics or specialist skills. Others just might be confidence building or networking skills. It's a real range of technical and kind of softer skills. But yeah, the two platforms have been amazing just to be able to continue that connection and to help share people's stories, really.
I think that's the clever way to spin it, because one of the big things I realized a while back is that, again, so when you do this, it has to be about the guest. It has to be all about you and your story. Because again, it's that brand awareness that hopefully people might know who I am, but actually they're tuning because they want to learn from you. And that's almost, when you're trying to create content, which is the classic thing about how do you, stand out and whatever. I love talking to people. So it's almost what I will happily talk. I only pick people I like, if there's someone I actually don't like, I don't do it. But, so I've learned so much about you today that almost, I don't even care if nobody else watches it. This to me is fun and it has value. Yeah. But then when you get to repurpose it and it goes on about 8 different channels, and today this is the first one going live on Instagram as well. It's just, it's that learning curve that I love the learning side to it, just try things and test things. And it's great to, just to see that it goes well. Did you ever fear, or when because I know you do, I've been a guest on some of them, when you go live, do you still get nervous?
Always. I'm always terrified that one, the guest doesn't turn up, which we were just talking about before. Touch wood, that's never happened to me yet, but we did have one guest who literally arrived like 30 seconds before go live. So we were in the throes of plan B. What if they don't turn up? Which we always have a plan B just in case. And I always worry that the technical stuff is going to fail. I mean, I hate technology at the best of times, but particularly when you're doing a recording or a live webinar, which are what ours are. So yeah, I mean, it was interesting through lockdown because you got all sorts of, kids in the background, people walking around with no clothes on, deliveries at the door, all the kind of humorous stuff that we all very quickly got used to. But now I just, it's so important that the quality of the video and the audio is right, because it just turns people off straight away if you can't get that right. 9 times out of 10, you vetted your guests, so you know they're going to be a good conversationalist and they're going to be able to, hold their own. But the technology is always what terrifies me. I don't think I'll ever stop worrying about that.
It's things do go. I've had everything. There was a client who we live streamed a really fancy event, and this was like quite early on, and it was same kit, same stuff I use every day. And we had MPs on the call, government ministers. It was quite a big deal. And I was manning it and I knew exactly what I was doing. We prepped everything properly, and I used Macs, and we got the umbrella wheel, and the software crashed and my arse went through the floor. I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
But look, it was an offshore energy business thing, and you prep everything, but if something goes wrong, we'll solve it, turn it off, turn it back on again.
Yeah.
And it worked. But I just trust me, if it fails, no harm done. But it was someone, it's so much pressure. But when talking to Chloe Clover, I've invited her on as a guest to do some live presenting, because that's a different gig altogether.
Yeah.
But actually, she likes pre-recording because she wants control of the edit and stuff.
Yeah.
I love the chaos.
Yeah, I'm all for the chaos. I'm fine with that. I think I mentioned to you before when we were chatting as well, one of my I must have done maybe, 18, 20 podcasts at this point. So I thought it was pretty, au fait at it. I then had the lovely editor of High Life North on, Laura Kingston, who, lucky she is just so lovely, spent an hour and a half recording a podcast and realized her audio hadn't recorded. And I had to message her the next day and say, I'm so sorry, we're going to have to do it all again.
Do you do it in person, or do you do it over Zoom, or how do you do it?
No, we do it, we've always done it over Zoom. But yeah, shit goes wrong in life, doesn't it? Every single day, something goes wrong. Something's a curveball that you weren't expecting. It's just part and parcel. So it's just about how you deal with it and fixing it.
It is what it is. Can we talk about SmartWorks?
Yes, let's talk about SmartWorks.
What is it?
So
what do you do?
I was introduced to SmartWorks actually before the pandemic hit. I was invited to one of their dinners with Lulu Guinness with a client of mine. So I went to this dinner and I was blown away by this charity. I had never heard of them, and they're local in Newcastle, but they were just doing the most phenomenal work in the region. And essentially what they do is help support women back into employment. They help dress women so that there is clothes accessible for them to be able to go to interviews. But they do so much more than that. They help coach them. They help with setting up interviews. We're now running job fairs. So it's really, really empowering women on a completely different level to get back into employment. And they are a tiny, small team. We've got a great board, but operationally as an executive team, they are tiny, and they just blow my mind at how amazing they are. We set targets this year to double the number of women we reach and get back into employment. This team, without any extra resource and help and support, are just nailing the numbers month after month. So yeah, it's just a phenomenal organization. I think it's still not getting the praise and the awareness that it deserves in the region. So that is my role, to come in and help really, raise awareness of what we're doing and help us reach more women. But they're amazing. This is a team who are a team of 4, and they just are unreal in what they're achieving. So big shout out to the SmartWorks team.
No, I've had do you know a guy called Darren Tate that has the men's equivalent of suitability?
Yeah.
And when I had him on, it's really funny that it broke my heart, but it was so inspirational that I sometimes, when a guest really kind of says something that gets to me, I'll step back and try and not tear up, and I'll come back. But just anyone that goes through that likewise, I have family that could use their services, shall we say, and it's that kind of thing that I get it, I embrace it, I understand it. So when people like Darren and the team at SmartWorks really put themselves out there to do a good cause, which genuinely helps people, because when you help people into jobs, it's not just like winning 200 quid in the lottery. It can change their whole life and give them stability and stuff. And it's amazing. So especially for what you do and what they do.
It's another level. And I think it's an organization that we're hopefully going to make a big splash this year. We've got a wonderful ambassador on board, which is Sarah Davies, who is doing great work for us now. And chair of the board is Sophie Milliken, who I'm sure you know, Steve, is fantastic. So yeah, watch this space for SmartWorks. I think it's just going to go from strength to strength, but it's definitely an organization to support in any way if you can. We're always looking for donations of clothing, of shoes, of accessories, and for volunteers to come and help and support if needed. So.
No, cool. I am conscious of how busy you are and family life and kids and stuff. At the end of every interview, I have a few different questions, which for me, it's my favorite bit. And these again all get clipped up and go onto YouTube and that kind of thing. And especially with someone that has, much varied experience and stuff as you do, what's the best piece of advice you've ever had?
The best piece of advice was don't listen to shit advice. So that served me really, really well, because as I mentioned before, Amy and I were told never go into business. I mean, I always seek advice because I think it's important to get opinions of others and make sure you're doing, your due diligence. But I'm always very strong in what I choose to listen to and what I choose to don't listen to. And so, yeah, shit advice, I definitely do not listen to. And I guess I'm not even sure if this was advice I was ever given, but it's definitely been my personality that has helped, I think, get me to where I am. But that's never, ever stop learning. Every opportunity, take it, because it will open a door in some sense, particularly every opportunity to learn. For me, I try and do as much learning as I can. I have 2 days dedicated to one business a week, 2 days to another business, and my Wednesday, my day in between, is my learning day. And I really dedicate as much time as I can through that working week to reading, to podcasts, to webinars, to courses, to qualifications. And it doesn't just teach you the thing you've gotten to learn. It opens opportunities to meet people and to network and to see things in a different way. So I guess, yeah, don't listen to shit advice and always keep learning.
I think it's good. If you were to give advice to your younger self, and it can be the kid at school, it could be you when you first set up, it could be you at the start of the pandemic. If you were to give advice to your younger self, what would it be?
I would say, this is quite boring advice, but I'll tell you what it is anyway, and maybe think of something more exciting. Learn the numbers.
Okay.
I think it's probably the advice I'd give myself as a younger entrepreneur, because I didn't know the difference between revenue and cash flow. I didn't know how one number affected another number. I went into Unwritten, in fact, so I'm not even talking about the first couple of businesses I had, which were, less serious businesses, but I went into Unwritten really not understanding numbers properly in the financials. And only when you really know that information can you make proper informed decisions. I've always been a bit of a maths geek. I love numbers. I always do. I do loads of the bookkeeping. I've done lots of the financial projections. I do, data analytics with marketing. Everything's based on numbers, but I didn't learn financial numbers quick enough. And that financial intelligence definitely is what sets you apart from being able to grow and survive as a business. That's my boring advice.
Honestly, that's not, like, I would 100% agree with that. And actually, the first person that said that on the podcast was a guy called Paul Blake, who runs Newcastle Eagles. But he said probably 10 years ago when he first set up, there was a certain point when they ran out of cash. And it's, it's part of the reason why it's the new module at the end of the roadmap. Is it's so important to kind of learn, because anyone that the more cash you have in the big business is like oxygen. You can deploy that in marketing and different things, but unless you're cash generative, and again, a lot of traditional MBAs won't teach you that. It's not bad advice. That's brilliant advice.
No, it's so important. And I mean, 2 or 3 times in the early years of Unwritten, Amy and I nearly ran out of cash. And we were billing a ton more than we were spending. We were, making good profit in the business, but we weren't keeping an eye on the cash, and we didn't understand why there wasn't any money in the bank when on the balance sheet it was healthy. And that took a few times before we realized the importance of it. And I think had we understood that before we'd gone into the business, we probably would have grown and scaled a lot quicker, or maybe not even a lot quicker, but certainly without some of the big ups and downs, because we'd suddenly hit that, where's all the money? And we'd go on this crazy drive to like build up again. And then we're like, oh, we're stable again. And then we weren't watching the same thing and we drop again. So yeah, it's such important advice. And you have to self-teach that, because you can't easily go and, you can read a book on it, or you can get somebody great in to help you. And I've had great advisors on that side, luckily, since the beginning of my business journey, but them advising you is not the same as you knowing and understanding it. And
it's that sick feeling in your stomach when you're like, fuck. Even Shana agrees it's really good advice. Is there anything you would like to talk about or plug before we go?
So guess is just that Fabric cohort is launching again in September. So our next cohort kicks off on the 9th of September. If you are a marketer who is looking to change your career path, really progress in your career and take the world by storm, then Fabric is the right thing for you. Drop us a little note or connect with us in our community. We've got tons of freebies, goodies, all sorts of knowledge share stuff. But other than that, I think that's all I've got to say.
Do you want to plug your socials?
So you can catch me on socials. Good God, you're going to ask me for all the handles, aren't you? I don't know what
you don't have to, but this gets everyone.
Yeah. I'm on all the socials. Lisa Eaton 35 on most of them. But yes, yeah, connect with me on socials if there's any questions or anybody wants to get into a specific topic. I know we didn't cover the MBO stuff today, but happy to share, any learnings along my business journey. So
no, cool. It was because when you talked about with your business part, I didn't think it was the right, with any interview, you always have to judge what you cut out, where do you think it's going, and just try and make it flow. So I purposely didn't do that. And I also didn't ask you about TikTok.
No, thank God, because trust me, I am not the TikTok expert, but just learn from Alice. Alice Rowan Hall is a TikTok expert. There's a great Level Up webinar on the Fabric website that Alice did for us on TikTok. So she's the girl for that, not me.
No, cool. Well, genuinely, I appreciate your time. It's always funny that I purposely pick the end of Mondays where you're back up to speed. You kind of know where you're at enough to, give an hour to talk, and then the rest of the week just happens. But no, I genuinely appreciate your time. I've really enjoyed hearing the story, actually, because you get to know people a little bit, but actually it's only when you really talk to them and you find out, I didn't know you didn't go to uni and you did this, and that's quite cool. And then your parents are really supportive, and when you see how it all starts to play through. And again, when people will genuinely appreciate the honesty about cash flow and different stuff, because it's the one classic thing that everyone always sees online. Like, how often do people put bad news on LinkedIn unless it's clickbait? You know what I mean? And it's that part of the reason I love long form content, which I know is how we started, is because people get to know you a little bit better. Yeah. And that's why I like it. It's that authenticity that you can't fake. But
completely. And people love those ups and downs. They don't want somebody who's perfect all the time. They know that that's not real. So sharing your experiences when you've gone through a hard time or made a huge mistake or, really failed at something, whatever it is, people can resonate with that, and it helps build people up and give them confidence that they're not the only people going through something. So yeah, I'm always all about kind of sharing your ups and your downs equally, because, it will help somebody out there, no doubt. So and thank you for having me. It's been lovely to talk. It's been great to be on the other side where I didn't have to do all the prep and the technical chaos.
You'd be surprised at how little prep I do. I've but again, it's because I only pick people I actually want to talk to. I almost don't need the notes. I just want to ask you stuff. And again, it's from an interview point of view, one of my pet peeves, and you get certain PR companies that do this, I won't name them, and they have a guest on and it's set fixed questions and it's fixed answers, and they're like, what? It's terrible.
No, completely. And same with my podcast. I've always got a couple of guiding pillars and some questions, but we end up on all sorts of tangents, and as we have done half the time, not covered the questions, but that's where the conversation takes us, which is what it should be, isn't it? So
well, thank you for your time. Have a wonderful evening, and I'm sure I'll speak to you soon.
You too. Thanks so much, Steve.
Cheers,
Take
Lisa.
care.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.